I'm not exaggerating when I say that David's Torah portion is such a big deal that even the Pope used it as his call for turning the year 2000 into what the Torah calls the Jubilee year. That was 3 years before you were born. The Jubilee year, which is part of David's Torah portion in Leviticus 25, he's going to read the opening section. My job is to frame the whole Torah portion. We're not going to read the entire Torah portion, or we'll be here till 2 o'clock. So the Leviticus 25 that he will read, the Jubilee year was to be celebrated every 50th year, 50, as a time for rest, recreation. You're going to hear him talk about the environment, so I won't. But the word jubilation comes from the notion of the Jubilee year. This is what the Torah says. You shall number 7 Sabbaths of years to you, 7 times 7 years. And many reasons have been given for the establishment of this 50th year. Economically, it was designed as a safety net for the poor. Ethically, it reminded people that we don't really own the land, even if we think we do. And the Jubilee year also permitted a kind of public repentance for injustice, which is what many of us clergy and the Pope himself were aiming for 3 years before David was born, to make the new millennium a time for reconciliation, respect, civility between people of different faiths, nationalities, and ethnicities. I think you'll agree we still have a long way to go with that. But there are 2 more expressions with which you're familiar from the larger frame of David's Torah portion, which is called on the mountain, Bahar, that is Mount Sinai, where Moses and the Jewish people were given this Torah, which David is about to receive from his own parents and grandparents thousands of years later. The first expression is a sabbatical year. It's the first time the word sabbatical appears, every 7th year. It's an expression of the same idea as Sabbath, same Hebrew letters, Shabbat, Sabbath, Shabbaton, sabbatical. And like the Sabbath, the sabbatical year, which is presently enjoyed by college professors, rabbis, others who get to observe it, it's a year of refocus. And the predominant rule of the sabbatical year and Sabbath is to live in harmony with what is, not to seek change. In fact, did you know that the word Sabbath, Shabbat, or sabbatical, Shabbaton, are the same letter root in Hebrew for the verb to go on strike, to stop and just be. The Sabbath day and the sabbatical year are times not to give out, but to take in, as we're marveling at David and his growth through the years. Also, in this week's Torah portion of David's are the words inscribed on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia: proclaim liberty or release throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. That's the introduction to the Jubilee year. And again, we'll let David share what his Torah portion means. But I just wanted to end by sharing what I think is perhaps the most powerful connection between this entire Torah portion, David, Gary, Sheila, Michael, and all you relative and friends. It's one word. It's the name of David's Torah portion, Bahar. As I said, the opening word phrase means on the mountain. Now, when you think about it, the Torah, the Bible, records many instances where mountains play a significant role. Remember the grounding of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat? There's the testing of Abraham on Mount Moriah, not the street in Memphis, Mount Moriah, but the original Mount Moriah in Israel. There's the prophet Elijah on Mount Carmel in Israel. Let's hear it for the women. There's Deborah defeating the enemy on Mount Tabor. And of course, Moses receiving the Torah, Bahar on Mount Sinai. God speaks to Moses on top of the mountain as if to say, don't just think of how far you have to go, Moses. Look down and look back to appreciate just how far you've come. This is the moment and the day for standing on the Han Starkey family mountain and appreciating how far a son who was once a baby has come. A boy who is now the caring, responsible, promising, young Jewish teen as of Wednesday we know as David Hahn. And so standing on this family mountain, we reenact that moment at Mount Sinai when everyone present stood to receive the Torah.